Well, the Penguins are off today, but as usual for this podcast, the content does not stop there. We have practice updates for the Penguins today, including a big one on Teddy Blooger. We're going to preview the game against New Jersey on Thursday. Plus, go into some more trade targets, see if a couple names that have popped up recently make sense. If they don't make sense, go into their numbers a little bit, contract, all that stuff. That's all coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to this Tuesday evening episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am, of course, your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow this show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And, of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. A little messy, just a bit back here. I'm back in my normal spot today for recording. So, camera's better and just, I much prefer this setup, to say the least. But Penguins, of course, they are off on Tuesday. They'll be off until Thursday when they'll get the New Jersey Devils for the fourth and final time this year. The Penguins have won the previous two. The Devils, of course, beat them back in Pittsburgh early in the season. I have a full preview of that coming up a little bit later. But first, there was, big news today out of Penguins practice, and that was Teddy Blooger returning to the ice with his teammates, skating in a non-contact capacity. So still a little bit ways away. He'll probably be full contact, maybe within a week or something like that. But it's still huge that he's nearing the end of his injury here with the broken jaw. This is a player that the Penguins badly miss. He is basically the glue that keeps that shutdown line together. Because if you take him away, sure, Aston Reese is good defensively, but if you put him on any other line or give him other line mates, it's not going to look the same. We all saw how good the line was with Blooger, Aston Reese, and Tanev last year, when Blooger was there. Offensively, they were still driving play, and defensively, they were shutting down whoever Mike Sullivan, was putting them out there against. Now, with him out of the lineup, it just, the lines are all jumbled. I like Brian Boyle as a player. I think he's, impressed at times. Dominic Simone has been mostly okay, but, that fourth line is definitely a big drop off from, the one that has Brock McGinn and Zach Aston Reese, flanking Teddy. So getting him back is going to be so crucial. Also for the penalty kill, I think the PK has also dropped off a little bit. I saw this stat, I think, from Bob Grove that said since Blooger went out, the PK has dropped. Well, not dropped overall, but the PK, just in that small sample size has only been around, I think, 75 to 80%. And before that, it was around 90 to 95%. It's just a huge swing, and all it takes is that one bottom six player to come out of the lineup. And then, the struggles mount. And, I know the team has won 4 of their last 6 games. That are playing mostly fine, I would say. But this is still a player that the team badly needs back. And I'm just really thankful that he is already practicing with the team. And hopefully the return is coming within a couple of weeks, if not sooner. That would be great. Zach Aston Reese did not practice today. I believe it is a maintenance day for him, according to Mike Sullivan. So I'm sure he will be fine for the game against New Jersey. Speaking of New Jersey, Dougie Hamilton, he's been practicing. He will be playing on Thursday against the Penguins per Lindy Ruff. He's been banged up a little bit lately. And I actually do not believe he played in the last matchup. So that's going to be a big return, or a big boost, I should say, for New Jersey, even though they haven't been good this year. He's still one of the premier defensemen in the NHL. But that was really the big update out of Penguins practice today. Everyone else was present and accounted for. Only one, of course, that was not, as I said, Aston Reese, and then Jason Zucker. He's still rehabbing from his hernia injury. So, once Blooger comes back, they're only going to be down Jason Zucker. And I think the lineup decision when Blooger comes back, I personally think it's going to be Simone that comes out, though I would not be surprised if it is Boyle. Honestly, as long as I think they can reunite that Blooger, Aston Reese, McGinn trio, I don't really mind if Simone is on the third line or anything like that until Jason comes back. If you wanted to do a Simone Carter Rodriguez third line or something like that, and you can put Heinen with Malkin and Kapanen up there, even though he's not been good. I mean, I guess that's fine for the time being. But, when Jason Zucker comes back, and eventually that is going to happen, remember, I think that they might do like a combination of Zucker with Malkin and Heinen and then move Kapanen down. But, in a perfect world, I would want Kapanen kind of out of the lineup just because he's not been good this year. I've seen no evidence that he's going to turn it around either. So the Penguins are definitely going to have their options, especially leading up to the deadline and, when a couple of these injured players come back. I mean, there's going to be, I think, some tough decisions that Mike Sullivan is going to have to make, and I'm really curious to see what he does, to say the least. I'm glad that Simone and Boyle have been playing fine, but as I was talking to Doug Lackey on my episode on Monday, in case some of you all have not listened to it, I think a player like Boyle would be exposed against a team like Carolina just because he doesn't have the foot speed to keep up with those players. I mean, he's a big body. I know he has a long reach. He's okay along the boards and all that, but skating wise, he's just not going to keep up with how deep Carolina is and with how fast they play, especially in transition. They burned the Penguins a couple of times on Sunday. I personally think that would be a big mistake. In my opinion, if he were to be iced in that series. If you want to maybe ice him against the New York Rangers, if injuries, allow it, go ahead. But, still, I know I said a couple of weeks ago I wouldn't mind if he would be in the playoff lineup, but I still think, in a perfect world or in a world, obviously in a world without any injuries for this team, he is the 13th or 14th forward. And, I think the team will be better off for it at that point. And I know a lot of the players respect him, to say the least. So I think that basically covers it from today's practice notes. The line, otherwise the lines were the same. Blooger didn't really take a lot of line rushes. He's not going to start doing that until he takes full contact. They still have a couple of days until the until the New Jersey game. Maybe he's full contact against in practice on Wednesday and is able to go on Thursday. I doubt it. That's just my take. I think there's the potential that he could come back in one of the back-to-back games this weekend against the Rangers and the Blue Jackets. The Penguins have a lot of Metro games coming up. That's going to be one on Saturday and then one on Sunday. So 3 games in 4 nights kind of thing for the Penguins coming up. If he's able to come back again within 2 weeks or, less than that, hell, even within a week, it's going to solve, I think, a lot of the Penguins' problems because he's just a player that I shouldn't say is unreplaceable, but he's a player that you can easily see that the team is worse without him in the lineup. So I'm really glad that he is practicing. That wraps up this first segment of the show. Had to get in some practice notes, thoughts on some of the lines and all that. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to preview the game against the New Jersey Devils. And then later on in the show, we're going to get to some trade targets that have been popped up over the last day or two. I'll give my thoughts on some of those players. And yes, one of them does include Phil the Thrill. You're going to hear my thoughts on the man, the myth, the legend, Phil Kessel, coming up in the third segment of today's episode. But before we do that, though, football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. Hello, welcome back to this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. Because I am an idiot and did not have these loaded up onto my PC, I am loading up the lines for New Jersey and, of course, their underlying numbers as well. As I said in the first segment, Dougie Hamilton will be back per head coach Lindy Ruff. This is the final time that the Penguins and Devils will meet this season. Jack Hughes is obviously on the top line with Sharon Govich. He's a heck of a player. I think he's only going to continue to get better as well. And I think in that last matchup, I touched on it a little bit But we can really see just how good Jack Hughes has gotten. And this is what, year 3 for him, basically. As a rookie, didn't really impress me that much. Year 2, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see that maybe a breakout is coming. This year, when healthy, I mean, this kid is a star. He's still in his peak years. I know some people didn't really like the contract that he signed. I think at the end of the day, that's going to look like a bargain once it's all said and done, because this guy, again, he just has so much talent. Great offensively, defensively, maybe needs a little bit of work, but he's still not bad there. And this is a player that I really think New Jersey can build around for their future. I think the Devils still have a lot they need to do to get right. They got to surround him with a lot more high-end talent, get better defensively, maybe get a couple goalies in there that can actually stay freaking healthy, because as of right now, as I look at left wing lock, it's still John Gillies and Nico Dawes. So I am not too sure if not either Bernier or Blackwood are going to play on Thursday. I don't think they are. So I think right now the Penguins are probably going to see John Gillies again. And he was having a pretty good game a few weeks ago when these two teams played in Newark. He was honestly on his way towards stealing it before the Penguins were able to turn it up a little bit and get a couple of goals past, the Matheson one. Rust was able to score one. Brian Boyle was able to get the decider to make it, I believe it was 3-2. And then the Penguins were able to win the game a little later on the third period with the empty netter. I believe that was from Jake Gensel. But, he still played an admirable game. He's a big guy. I believe he's like 6'5", 6'6", takes up a lot of the net. The Penguins are going to have to, shoot wisely, excuse me, I think, on him, just because of how much of the net he takes up. Nico Hischier on the second line with Pavel Zacha and Jesper Bratt. I think Zacha is garnering a lot of trade interest, rightfully so. He's been one of their best players this year. Jesper Bratt, I think, has also been really good. I would not be shocked if he generates a lot of trade interest too. Adam Boquist, Tomas Tatar, Andreas Janssen, Jimmy Vesey on the fourth line, Mike McLeod, and then Bastian on the fourth line. So there is, again, a lot to like here with New Jersey, but I still think there are a couple of impact forwards away from really making, a push for the playoffs. Again, I love Jack Hughes. Nico Hischier, I mean, that's a gorgeous 1-2 punch. I'm not saying it's like Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin over here, or Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, or, Alex Ovechkin, Nicholas Backstrom. I know both of them are not centers like Hughes and Hischier are. I know Backstrom obviously is. But, this is still a pretty damn good 1-2 duo. And if they can actually, again, get more talent, they can really start making a push. Jimmy Vesey, I don't really think is that good. McLeod, Bastian, if they can get a couple better players for their bottom six, that would point them in the right direction. Tatar has really not been good since coming over from Montreal. I was a big advocate for the Penguins to sign him over the offseason, but with how he's playing this year, I shouldn't say I'm glad that they didn't, because I think he would be better in Pittsburgh, especially on Evgeny Malkin's line. I mean, when you're playing with players such as Andreas Janssen and Adam Boquist, I'm pretty sure you're not going to put up a lot of production. Now, if he was playing a lot with Hischier and Hughes, maybe that would be a different story, right? But the fact of the matter is, he just hasn't been the same player this year. And I shouldn't say you should see why Montreal scratched him, because I still don't understand why they did that. But he definitely, I think, has more to give. That's for sure. Defensively, it'll be Dougie Hamilton on the top pairing with Jonas Siegenthaler, former Washington Capital, Ryan Graves with Damon Severson, and then Ty Smith with PK Subban. So there is some to like here with this defensive corps. Obviously, Dougie is one of the 10 best defensemen in the league. If anyone tries to argue that, I question your ability to basically evaluate defensemen in this league. Damon Severson's been going at it for a long time. He's maybe slipped out just a little bit, but he's still pretty dang good. Ty Smith is going to be one heck of a player. Ryan Graves was kind of an outcast in Colorado. He really wasn't, I shouldn't say he was the weak link, but, he was the player out there that, was just needed more, I guess. And the Devils were able to trade for him, and he's been, I guess, decent this year. PK Subban obviously is not who he once was. I do find it weird that they're not putting Ty Smith and Dougie Hamilton on the top pairing. It looks like it's going to be Siegenthaler. I've never thought of him as a top pairing defenseman. His underlying numbers, his overall numbers as well point to him being a second pairing, third pairing guy. So to see him on the top pairing, definitely a little weird. I think, at least in my opinion, going to their underlying numbers, they have 50% of the expected goals this year. That's not terrible, but if you go to their actual goals for, at 5-5, the Devils only have 43% of the actual goals. They have a minus 33 goal differential. They have been on the ice for 51% of the shot attempts overall. That's pretty good in 2,500 minutes of ice time. If we look at some more numbers over here, their goals for above expected minus 8.25. This is a team that's, they just haven't scored a lot this year. And, they also haven't gotten good goaltending overall. Their team save percentage at 5v5 is .893. That's one of the worst marks in the league. When any team is below 900, they're not getting the job done. And, obviously it is hard to get the job done when you're down both of your starting goaltenders and Jonathan Bernier and Mackenzie Blackwood. They're basically on their third and fourth string guys right now. I think that's part of the reason why this season has gone off the rails for New Jersey. I've already touched on other reasons. They don't have enough scoring. Defensively, I think they maybe use one upgrade there, but they got to surround their two big guys with more talent. But again, when you have that kind of goaltending, you're not going to go anywhere. I don't care what team it is. Honestly, a good comparison there is Seattle, because the Kraken have talent. McCann's been really good. Eberle's been good. Giordano's been awesome. Yarncrook hasn't been bad, but they have one of the worst 5-on-5 save percentages in the league. It's below 900 because, Grubauer has just been downright awful in Seattle this year. If I can actually find this on Money Puck right now, if I can scroll up here, let me just take a look if I can find it. Yeah, their save percentage this year. Let me just make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah, .893. That's that. I mean, again, with a team with talent, or at least with some talent, you're not going to win with that kind of goaltending. And it's no surprise to see both of those teams, at the bottom of the NHL standings. Their goals for per 60 to right 2.42. Their goals against per 63.22. So they're giving up quite a few goals per game, quite a few chances per game. This is not, a defensively sound team overall, even looking past the defenseman. I have no idea how Lindy Ruff has survived this long in New Jersey. I don't really know what Tom Fitzgerald is waiting for. I do think that they are going to be sellers at the deadline, and rightfully so. I will be curious to see who goes there. Are they going to move someone like Jesper Bratt, Pavel Zacha? Just really curious to see what the Devils' plans are for the deadline. But that is a full preview for the game on Thursday. This is a matchup that the Penguins, again, they should win. They're better than them. They've played New Jersey a lot better this year compared to the last few years. They've at least taken 2 out of 3. Time to finish the job and go 3 out of 4 and get 2 much needed points, because Carolina right now is 4 points up on the Penguins and they still have a game or 2 in hand. And of course, the Penguins also have the Rangers coming to town this Saturday to PPG Paints Arena. That's just another massive matchup. But we're going to get to that up on Friday when Nick Zararis of the Upper Bowl GM podcast joins the show. But that'll do it for this second segment of the show. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to get into a couple of trade options that I've seen popped up through the last couple of days, and whether or not it makes sense for the Penguins. So stick around for that, coming up right after this. All right, so we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow this show's Twitter, LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So I've seen some people throw around the take that the Penguins should be in play for Phil Kessel. And I've seen the Penguins link to them. I think it was per David Pagnotta of the fourth period. I'm actually trying to find my DMs here with Jason, because I believe he put Phil Kessel's Andy Mono chart in here. Offensively, he's in the 73rd percentile transition, 88% scoring, 62% shot contribution, 65% shooting ability, 43% power play, 31%. He does have 32 points in 48 games. He has 6 goals, but that's the thing. This is supposed to be a pure goal scorer, right? But he only has 6 goals this year. Yes, I understand he is playing on the Coyotes. They're one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in hockey, right up there with Montreal. But Kessel has just really fallen off at 5v5. I think a lot of fans are looking at this just as a homecoming kind of thing, or, I'm trying to think of another word for, recency bias from a few years ago, but I just don't think it makes sense. Obviously, my heart would love it because I love Phil Kessel, but in my head, I'm like, no, his numbers aren't what they used to be. His production isn't what it used to be. And remember, him and Malkin started to not get along, I believe, towards the end of the Penguins, towards the end of Kessel's tenure in Pittsburgh. I think it was also reported that he was driving Mike Sullivan crazy as well. So I think Kessel gets traded, though I don't think it's to Pittsburgh. I think there's better players out there that the Penguins can go after. Connor Garland, especially from Vancouver. JT Miller, I've already touched on. Brock Besser. I think obviously the Penguins could probably get Kessel for a decent price, and he is still, not a bad player, but I think the ship has sailed on him. I loved what he did for this team for, numerous years. He brought them to back-to-back Stanley Cups. After that, he was always awesome, but, this is not the same player from 2017 and 2018. So those are my thoughts, at least on Phil. But now if we go down to Rickard Rakell, this is per Andy Arono. This is data from Natural Stat Trick and Corey Schnazner. He does his awesome work on his Patreon. Please go check that out. And I really hope I did not mispronounce his last name. That is a hard one to pronounce, but I think I got it. But anyways, going to Rickard Rakell, he has 11 goals, 21 points in 39 games this season. 68th percentile for offense, 51% for scoring, shot contribution, 50%, defense, 31st chances, 36, transition ability, going obviously from defense to offense, 36%, is not good with high danger assists, only 25%. Excuse me. His recovery is at 21%. Shooting ability, not bad, 78th percentile. Power play, 44th percent. Passing, 38. You get the drift. I don't think this would be a good trade. I think a year ago, you could have definitely said, okay, you can give up a first for Rakell. But if the Penguins were to do that, I think we would be right back where we are right now with Pittsburgh Penguins, because it was a big price to pay when Rutherford gave up that first. I know Cappy was really good last year, but he's turned back into a pumpkin this year, and now that price is that return that they gave up is looking like, holy crap, that's a massive overpayment. And I think if the Penguins were to go out and get Rakell, excuse me, it would basically just be, I wouldn't hope for a return like that. I would want it to be something, less. But if the Penguins were to give up something like that, it would just be, I think, a colossal mistake, because this is not the same player that he used to be. Joe Pavelski, I've already said I would love if the Penguins can get him. 96th percentile for offense, 77th percentile for defense, scoring 94%, shooting 87%, passing 95%, power play ability 85%, play driving 92%, 19 goals, 48 points in 46 games at the time that Jason sent me this. I'm all for it. If you can go out and get a package deal of him and Braden Holtby and give up whatever, I would be down for it. I think you get your two biggest needs with that: a capable player to play in your top six outside the Sidney Crosby line, and you get a veteran backup that can actually come in for Tristan Jarry when he needs a night off, and he's probably not going to give a crap if he's on the bench in the playoffs. And you know what? If Tristan falters, so help me God if he does, you can go to a Stanley Cup champion who has had some pretty damn good playoff numbers, to say the least. So I'd be a big fan of that. Connor Garland, again, I am also a huge fan of him. If I can go find his underlying numbers, I believe it was Mad Chad 412 that tweeted this out. Yeah, this is from Jay Fresh. His projected wins above replacement this right now: 86% even strength offense, 73%, goals per 60, 80%, primary assists per 60, 96th percentile, even strength defense, 65%, penalties drawn, 99%. He has an 80% finishing ability. He makes $5 million times for 5 years. So this would be we'd have a lot of term on his deal. He would probably cost a little bit, but he would be a lot of fun to bring over. And I also think that Jim Rutherford and Patrick Altheen could be had in a trade. So obviously I love Besser. If they could get him, that's great. But if they can't, I'd go get Garland. I know the Vancouver just acquired him, so maybe they'll be like, we don't really know if we want to move him. But, is he going to be part of the answer there for that rebuild? I'm not so sure. But wanted to get into some trade talks. Let me know what you all think about some of those targets. You can comment on the YouTube page, tweet me, DM me, just let me know who you think the team should go after, and maybe I'll touch on it on a future episode. So again, that will wrap up this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for listening to this one. I'll be back with another episode on Wednesday before a full game recap episode coming on Thursday. So I will talk to you all tomorrow.